Hey guys, I hope you're doing well today. I'm very happy to say that I just passed the Azure 204 exam, and I also want to give you some feedback with respect to the exam. So, particularly if you're a Java developer like I am, you might have some expectations with respect to Microsoft Cloud Azure, and if you're you're trying to pass the 204 exam. I'm just trying to set your expectations in the right direction. So just to give you a background, I'm a Java developer. I'm also AWS-certified developer. I have passed my associate exam for developer and architect, solutions architect with AWS. And I've been developing solutions for AWS for some time. So I think it's over 4 years now. And decided to move to Azure because of various projects and also personal interest, as well as the fact that also to broaden my knowledge in other cloud providers than AWS. So I'm pretty sure that you want to know whether it is easy to pass or if it's not easy to pass. So I have to be honest with you, with many questions, I was really surprised. I wasn't quite sure whether I would pass it or not until the very end. One tip to tell you is that you definitely need to read, questions, and sometimes 2 or 3 times. Just pay attention to all the details because they contain a lot of hints with respect to the expected answer. So that definitely something that you need to pay attention. But generally, if you want to know why was it tough, I think one of the things with Microsoft and Azure in particular is the fact that Azure has loads of different services that are not really developed in some sort of like a linear way as AWS does it. I think many services come with different versions, and they're not split in the way AWS is done in a very clear manner. So just to give you an example, a storage solution for Azure might come, as a file share, as a queue, as a blob, or as a table, and you would expect, with AWS experience, that queue would be like a very different service, but that's not necessarily the case. And also blobs divide into different types of blobs, like blob, like a pen blob or a page blob, which have a different, characteristics, and also come with different tiers, which might be a premium tier or a normal tier, which implies which implies different redundancy options for it. You can, and when you start learning about it, it just becomes a little bit cumbersome. It's not necessarily the clearest to understand. What is what. So that's one of the things that you need to bear in mind, that it is not as simple as AWS, that there is an S3, that you have your EFS, EBS, and so on. And if you want to ask me if AWS experience helps in passing 204, I think it might to a certain extent, but I wouldn't be setting your expectations high because of simple things like services are different, CLI is different, API is different, and most interestingly, all the names in Azure versus AWS are different again. So it makes things a little bit trickier here, and it's really worth noting that I think that Microsoft put some effort into making sure that these names are different, because like if you're used to buckets in AWS, there's no buckets, there is blobs and containers. If you're used to VPCs, there's no VPCs, there's VNets. there is no lambdas, there's Azure functions, and obviously there is no basic services like EC2. There are VMs and so on. So it makes things trickier. You need to learn these new words and new vocabulary, and if you've done previously the AZ-900, it's going to be easier, but still your experience with AWS might be here very irrelevant. Now, if you're a Java developer, you might wonder, how suitable is, or how well AZ-204 is aligned or targeted for Java developers. And I want to say that's not necessarily the case, because Microsoft wants to promote their solutions, and when it comes to the exam itself, the AZ-204 comes with two options. It's either C# or Python that you might try. It's a bit of a shame that there is no Java option here, but you need to know at least some basic APIs from C# or Python here. It's gonna be definitely easier. This is not to say that Azure is not suitable for Java. That's definitely not the case. There's loads of tutorials and so on, but when it comes to the exam itself, you need to know at least some basic C#, and you need to get your head around it. I don't think there's much hassle, and if you have that Java experience, C# is going to be easy for you, so there should be no doubt about it. Another thing that is worth noting is the content, especially if you're coming from Linux or Unix environment. You didn't have much experience with Active Directory, and you didn't have any experience with that. You'll need to spend some time trying to get your head around Azure Active Directory, and it was a bit of a challenge for me, because I found it a bit of a novelty when it comes to different flows and different assignment of roles, managing identities, and how you authenticate users for different types of applications. So there's like good number of things that you need to look into, and I think that experience with coding it's really essential here. Just trying to develop an application that can help you, that can get you there, where you can try different types of authorization, just get roles and so on. So it's definitely that's definitely a requirement on the exam. So how did I prep? So first of all, I followed official tutorial from Microsoft Learn. I think it's a very good starter, and you definitely need to look into. Just go through it quickly, for the first, just scan it briefly, go very fast through it and go back again. Just do the labs, and remember that these labs that are in the official tutorial, they're not necessarily sufficient. It's not really all that you need. They're not going to take you, they're not guarantee your success. You need to look into references, you need to look into links, and you need to look into different or external labs, coming with other tutorials that are beyond the official 204 preps. So in order to complement this tutorial, I also took Udemy classes. The first one was mostly concerned about like theoretical aspects about services and so on, because obviously you need to know all the different services in Azure. And the other thing, and the other Udemy course that I took was one that was primarily related to labs and exercises, and it actually helped me understand, it helped me to to practice and to make sense out of all of this stuff that I've learned before, because it's really essential to do these labs. I don't think anyone can pass without doing the exercises itself. Finally, I did a lot of practice tests as well, and there is online exercises coming from Azure. There are also generally available questions from 204, and with these questions, the topics are very broad, and what I did is I went into every particular topic and tried to find references, resources, or decoding labs. So I think that the questions themselves are just a real eye-opener, because you realize how little your knowledge actually is when it comes to Azure. You learn about all the different nuances that you need to know for the exam. So my key takeaways is that if you want to know if Azure 204 is worth it, and for Java developer, I would say yes, because you learn about new services, how they click together, how you deal with event handling with Azure, which is obviously different than any other cloud providers. There is a good online documentation. You can keep reading it forever if you only have time. The downside of it clearly is that the 204 is not concerned about Java API, and I think this is a big downside for anyone who is a Java developer, because at the end of the day you will need to spend your time trying to learn API and getting more experience with the actual Java code in Azure. So that's the downside. Your previous AWS or cloud experience might give you some ideas of patterns, how things should work, or what's the storage, what's the compute, and so on. But I wouldn't be really relying on it, and I don't think it's any, in any way sufficient to pass, Azure exams. Everything is new here, and I think you should probably approach this, as a completely new experience. So you won't be able to draw much on your previous expertise with AWS. And finally, the exam itself, I think you need to prep for that. If you didn't have much cloud experience, just take AZ-900. It will broaden your vocabulary. It will get you used to services. It will be just basically a good foundation for your 204 exam. And last not least is practice the actual tests. Do the online tests from Azure. Just try a number of times and find out all the gaps in your knowledge, because you will find a lot of it. And even if you are experienced with Azure itself, you will still struggle with certain topics, because there is no way you can learn all of the things and you can be experienced with all different services. There's not a chance. So you just need to do your proper work. And I think that's it from my side. I hope it was helpful. If you have any more questions, just leave me a comment. I'll be very happy, because I'm just new to YouTube, and I'll be happy to address that. So, and also subscribe. Okay, so that's all. Thanks, folks. Bye.